So we'll take this opportunity to officially welcome you all to this very important session so that we discuss the financing mechanisms and specifically green bonds at the sub-national level. So my name is Hilary Korir. I work at the National Treasury, senior economist there, at the Climate Finance and Green Economy Unit, working on green finance related actions, green economy, and several other engagements that we've had. As a country, we've done some work in terms of trying to mobilize resources for this country. We have the enabling policy environment. In our national policy on climate finance of 2018, green bonds was identified as one of the very important instruments to enable us to be able to mobilize additional capital to advance the green economy agenda. And since then, we've made some milestones in terms of driving that process, creating enabling policy and also capacity and building the market for us to be able to scale up green bond work in the country. So we've worked with a number of partners in this journey since 2016, 2017, in terms of building the work and enabling the work on green bonds. One is the Capital Markets Authority, the Nairobi Securities Exchange, the Nairobi Securities Exchange, of course, FSD, and several other stakeholders, including the Kenya Bankers Association and the Central Bank of Kenya, in terms of the driving agenda on green finance in this country. So what is green bond? I'll want to invite our colleague Ansetse to come and give the context and set the scene on what a green bond is. We know, for the Kenyans, you know what a Eurobond is. Tunajua Eurobond. Now this is a green bond. I'll want to invite Ansetse. Ansetse is a senior economist working with FSD Kenya, and she will highlight what we are talking about here on green bond, and also invite the next session in terms of what we've done at the sub-national level or at the county level to make us ready in the green bond journey. Thank you. Karibu sana.
Thank you, Hilary, and thank you all for making time to be here. My name is Ansetse Ware. I'm senior economist at FSD Kenya. So I'll give you some background on why we felt it was important for us to do this work on looking at the potential for county governments to issue green bonds in the market here. So first of all, I just want to say that one of the reasons we did this work is because while Kenya has listed one green bond, it was a corporate green bond. We've only listed one, and I think as an economy, we can do a lot more to develop a pipeline of green bond projects that allow particularly county governments to leverage it. So the objective of the project that we've been doing, we started this work in October 22 with the partnership of the National Treasury and the Council of Governors. And we set out to assess first just 10 counties and make a very concrete assessment of what are the viable opportunities there. So what were we doing in our assessment? Essentially, we were looking at a structural approach to identifying green bond opportunities, because one thing you'll understand in African economies, you can't look at green finance opportunities in silo. You get a very unrealistic sense of what's going on. So what we did is we identified 10 counties, and the speaker that's following me will elucidate them. We made sure that the 10 counties we selected were representative of the country for two reasons. Firstly is because you'll find that a lot of the assets on which green bonds are listed are linked to geography and topography, and the geography and topography of our country is varied, and therefore we wanted to make sure that in the selection of the counties that we made, we'd be getting a holistic picture of our country in that sense. We also wanted to make sure that we were inclusive from a political economy perspective. The other reason we went with 10 counties is we wanted to look at the different levels of urbanization in counties and the different opportunities that arise. So we have some large counties that are very urban, like Nairobi and Kisumu, that we've assessed that have a certain type of green bond opportunity. We've looked at very rural counties as well, which also have immense green bond opportunity. But the interesting ones that we've been seeing are sort of the ones that are in the middle, counties like Laikipia that we went to, that are rapidly urbanizing counties, very strong town centers emerging, and sort of what green opportunities lie there. So when we were doing the specific assessment, really we're looking at 4 things. First, we did an economic and fiscal assessment of the counties. So we're like, okay, there may be green bonds, but what is the economic structure of the counties? What are the main sectors that drive the economic activity? And what has the county's fiscal performance been like? What is the state of their finances? Just to give a sense of, the reality that the green bonds would be operating in. The second thing we did is we did a credit risk assessment. So all the counties will get a shadow credit rating, and that will give them a very robust sense of their credit worthiness in the market should they go for listing. The third thing we did is we look at the green assets. So we actually went to all the 10 counties, and over a period of 4 to 5 days, we worked with the county governments, and they helped us to identify. They said, these are our priority assets, and we actually went there with the climate bond verifier to look at, okay, what do these assets actually look like? And the final thing that's equally important, we looked at the green finance capabilities of the county governments. And the good thing, because as what Hillary said from the National Treasury, because the national government has been having quite a bit of foresight in building green and climate financing that is deployed at county level, what we're finding is that county governments have quite a bit of green and climate finance legislation and quite a bit of experience that they're developing in handling funds that are specifically targeted for green and climate goals. So I think in terms of the counties that we're looking at 10 counties. I don't remember them all at the top of my head. I want to make sure that I leave that for EK. But the partnerships, I think, is what's been the most important part of this. Obviously, we have the National Treasury, which is our key partner, and the Council of Governors. But our lead consultant has actually been the one that's been helping us with the county governments. Augusta & Company is a credit rating agency, and they're the only African firm that is an approved climate bond verifier. What does that mean? It means that the only firm in Africa that can come to you, whether a private sector company or a government, and actually verify your climate and green bond and say, yeah, you can go for listing. And we really believe in partnering with African firms. We're also having a partner with the Capital Markets Authority. And the reason why we brought on the Capital Markets Authority is because you'll find that the policy and regulatory structure is something that we're going to have to work on, particularly to get a lot of these counties to market. So it's been a real privilege and honor working with the Capital Markets Authority. They regulate the capital markets, and they've been with us the whole journey, getting a sense of what needs to be done to get these green bonds to market. The other partner we've been working with is obviously the Nairobi Securities Exchange. Any and all green bonds will be listed on the exchange. They've also been a valuable private sector partner. They have a good sense of what a viable green bond looks like. And so having their eye in this project has been very useful. And then finally, we've had other consortium. They've been instrumental in making sure that we were engaging counties appropriately, and we were able to get all the right people in the room to get the content we wanted. And finally, the county governments, all 10 of them, I really want to thank them for their generosity that they've given us. We're in the process of finalizing the content with them, and we'll have a large launch where we'll provide more details on the specifics that we found with them that will be towards the end of the year. So if you want to be a part of that, you can let me know. So what we'll do now is we'll hand over to Ike. He's the regional director of Augusta & Company, and he will give you a flavor of what we've been finding in terms of the opportunities we're seeing at county level. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone, and it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much, Anzese, for that introduction. So I think for my end, I'd want to present some findings on our assessment that happened over the 10 counties we visited since October last year. I'd want to request if you could display this slide so that I could just walk us through some of our findings. So just like Anzese had mentioned, we had spent a minimum of 4 days at each of the 10 counties we visited. But it'll be interesting to find out what the findings are. So just follow me with me on this journey, and I'll speak a little about who exactly Augusto & Co is at the end of this. So first of all, I'll try to demystify green bonds. What exactly are green bonds? Why did we choose green bonds? The rationale behind green bonds. We'll speak around the market size of green bonds, just to give you an idea of the ecosystem of financing that's available for the counties to actually work with. Then we'll speak around the landscape. What has happened in Africa from a green bond perspective? Who have been issued? Who are the issuers? What type of instruments, what type of assets have they actually issued in the past? Then we'll dive straight into the findings. What did we see on ground across 10 counties? What are our insights? What are the tensions? Those areas that, really, counties, are they ready? Are they not ready? We'll speak a little about that. Then the opportunities. I'd like to just mention the opportunities are huge across the counties. Kenya is a jewel of inestimable value. We think huge opportunities lies at the county levels, and thanks to devolution, it's made it much more easier, and we think some of these opportunities we can leverage on to be able to access financing for the counties. So if you take me to the next slide. Yes, please, one more. Thank you. So let's start talking about what exactly are green bonds. We always heard about green bonds, social bonds, sustainability-linked bonds, but what exactly are green bonds? According to the International Capital Market Association, which is the global body for capital flow, it defines a green bond as an instrument that is labeled or differentiated that is exclusively used to finance green projects in quotes. You look at the World Bank and look at the European Commission, they've all given various definitions around green bond, focused on climate-related activities, meaning a green bond is different from a conventional financing because the use of proceeds must be tailored towards projects that have clear environmental benefits, either from a standpoint of climate change mitigation, adaptation, loss of biodiversity, and all of that. Those are issues that focuses on green bonds. So typically, the key focus on a green bond is not necessarily how you are raising the money, but it's what the funds will be used for. So we've come up with a concise definition to say a green bond is a fixed income instrument that the proceeds are earmarked exclusively. The key word there is exclusively to finance projects with environmental benefits. Most of those projects must be related to climate change mitigation adaptation, but more importantly, for you to qualify to be labeled a green bond, it must pass the test of the green bond principles. So there are rules and regulations around accessing green bond financing. So I just wanted to put this out here in terms of green bonds. It's not in the color, but it's in the rules and the fact that the proceeds have to be used exclusively for projects that have measurable environmental benefits. Because in the course of my conversation, you realize that those projects would have to be monitored on a periodic basis with reports on the impact on the environment, either from a standpoint of greenhouse gas emissions reduction, carbon monoxide. All of those issues are what we begin to track on a periodic basis. So please take us to the next slide in terms of the size of the market. As at the end of 2022, this market was about $3.8 trillion. The green bond is obviously the largest pool of that market, accounting for over 62% of the size. And other thematic labeled bonds are what we call the social bonds, which is mainly focused on social outcomes. So if you raise finance to perhaps provide education, provide reduce unemployment, health issues, it's a social issue. Why we have the sustainability-linked bonds, those are bonds that focused on both social and environment at the same time. Then you have the transition bonds and all of that variants. But the key focus here is the green bonds. The size of that market was about 2.2 trillion, and the total cumulative is over 3.8 trillion. And interestingly, of that 3.8 trillion, over 97% of them had to be aligned with the ICMA green bond principles, which is one of the standards Augusto & Co. subscribe to. And just like Anzese had mentioned, we're proud to say we're the only African company of African origin that is a green bond verifier today in Africa, meaning if you need to verify your projects, you need someone to actually validate that it meets some certain standards, and that's where Augusto & Co. comes to play. Just speaking around the different types of instruments and also the sizes over the last 5 years, just to give you some direction around how the market has grown. The largest issuances were in 2021, and post-2021, we've seen significant issuances despite the fiscal challenges with the war that's been happening in Ukraine and Russia. And in terms of the regions, you realize that the chart here shows Europe, Asia, North America, but you find it difficult to see where Africa is. because of the size of issuances. So the big question is, why is Africa not attracting these green finance opportunities? I mean, that's a question we need to begin to ponder about. Why are we not attracting green finance opportunities? Perhaps my next slide may give some clue around why we're not attracting green finance opportunities. So the next slide just speaks to some issuances that have happened in the market. I mean, the one that is famous in Kenya, one of them highlighted at number 8, is the Acorn Green Bond, which was on residential student hostel, excuse me, at Strathmore University, Kwetu University, the residential hostel, which was done in 2019. That was the first and still the only green bond to date. But when we speak about counties, there's been governments have issued green bonds in Africa, and we've tried to prototype 2 of them, the city of Cape Town and the government of Nigeria. They've actually issued green bonds, which means the appetite is there, the opportunity is there, and therefore counties can actually go towards this green market to access finance for infrastructure development, provided that the underlying cost has environmental benefits that are geared towards mitigating the impact of climate change or adapting to the challenges of climate change. So I would like to take you to the next slide, which now focuses on the sectors, the eligible sectors. So from a sectoral perspective, we have about 13 sectors where verification can actually occur at the moment. Those sectors include solar, wind, agriculture, waste management, forestry, bioenergy, buildings, geothermal, transport, water, marine, shipping, hydropower. What this means is that if you have specific projects across any of these 13 sectors, you're able to get assessed and appraised to be able to raise finance on the back of these your assets. So the good news is that these particular assets are what is key in Africa, is what the potentials in Africa exist for this particular sector. So these 13 sectors are where, in the course of our assessment, we found projects varying across the different countries along these 13 sectors. And I just want to give you a glimpse of what type of assets could potentially qualify to go through the green bond space for green financing. These are some of the assets that would qualify to be called a green assets. We have our hydropower, we have our electric cars, our offshore wind farms, our office buildings, our greenhouse gases, our solar farms, obviously, water treatment plants, our recycling plants, turning waste into energy, our forestry, our grids, our homes, our railways. The list is endless in terms of opportunities from an asset standpoint. So the big question is, where are we? How can we leverage on this existing framework, existing financing that's available to actually meet our infrastructural needs? So I want to take us through the key findings across the 10 counties we visited. These are the 10 counties we did for the first section of our assessment. We have Nairobi, Makueni, Laikipia, Kisumu, Taita Taveta, Kirinyaga, Embu, Vihiga, Nandi, and Wajir. Those are the 10 counties we actually did this assessment starting Q4 of 2022. In all of these counties, we spent about 4 to 5 days in each of them. And what did we find out? Some are interesting findings. These are the sectors of interest where we saw potential assets that could be converted into green finance in the near future. Agriculture and livestock, water and sanitation, public infrastructure, waste management, energy, whether it's renewable energy in terms of wind, in terms of solar, in terms of hydro. We also saw healthcare, tourism, housing, forestry, natural resources, urban development, trade and industrialization. These are the sectors of interest that we felt, and based on our assessment, would qualify because the asset pool exists in these counties. What are those tensions? I mean, going through an assessment of this nature, it will be inevitable to talk about some of the challenges or some of the, we call them tensions we saw on ground across the 10 counties. And these are not specific to any counties, but generic across the different counties. Before you begin to look at each one for each county, no, it's generic across the different counties. One of the key tensions we noticed was green asset ownership. Who owns these assets? The water bodies. Who owns the water bodies? The forest. There's a lot of contention. Some counties do not have an asset register, which means we cannot clearly state this asset belongs to us or belongs to another county. Some assets are actually shared across counties. So the big question is, who owns the asset? And in the green finance space, we need to understand who owns the asset or who owns the interest in those assets. Excuse me. For us to be able to leverage those assets to raise finance. The next tension we found on ground was great ambition by the counties, but viability of the project. Some projects, we went across were not viable, but the counties had good ambition. So the question is to balance your big ambition vis-a-vis viability of the project. Another key tension. Then the next was the county's financial statements. There's delay in release of the financial statements at the counties. Aside delays, most of the reports are usually qualified by the Auditor General of Kenya, which means the reliance we can place on those numbers becomes a key question. And that's one of the tensions we realized on ground. Yet again, fiscal challenges, both at the county level and at the national level. There are issues of concern, which we think we need to find very creative financial structures around all of this to be able to get to market. The next is the financial reporting framework. Currently, we still use the cash accounting framework, which only reports on cash basis. There's a movement towards the accrual, which ensures we're able to report on our assets and our liabilities. So it became a challenge in trying to appraise those counties to understand their true worth, their true net worth. Because with a cash system, it's difficult to actually measure the true worth. Then the fact that green bonds is a new market, so limited knowledge. People are getting on board the understanding of green bonds and how it can be applied. So the market is relatively young. And this ties up into the kind of financing structure. In the global north, the kind of financing structures that are being used include the blended financing architectures. But here, how do we bring all of that into play to ensure that the counties get value via this financing model? So that's another critical tension area, which means we need to do a lot of sensitization and awareness creation for people to understand. In fact, earlier today I was asked around ring fencing. What does ring fencing mean? How do you ring fence a county's assets? That's an important concept because in the green bond space, we need to be sure that those assets are productive assets and they can generate some measure of return, which is why it's been ring fenced into a pool to generate revenue. And then skills and capacities keeps growing, and we think there are room for growth in all of this. These are the tensions, a few of the tensions we've seen on ground. But regardless of the tensions, the opportunities are huge. I think you want to take me to the opportunities. The opportunities are huge. So let's not focus on the tensions. Let's focus on the opportunities. The time is right. If there was ever a better time to go green, yesterday was the better time. So we're actually 1 day late. The time is right for us to go green. Why are we all here? The ACS, the ACW, it's all about climate change. It's all about attracting finance to deepen Africa's involvement for infrastructure growth. Strategic partnerships. I'm sure you'd have listened to the various commitments that were made during the last 2 days. Strategic partnerships are invaluable, so there's momentum. And there's also a great ambition to pioneer Africa. The first Africa Climate Summit is held in Kenya. It's held in Nairobi. That speaks volume around the kind of ambition we have as a country to actually do what? Spearhead this conversation to go green. And we think we can do it. Looking at other opportunities we've seen, people are beginning to become receptive to new financing structures, the use of special purpose vehicles to raise finance, such that we begin to see off-balance sheet items rather than on the balance sheet of the counties. We see them off-balance sheet, special purpose. So people are beginning to open up to new creative structures to raise capital, to finance green infrastructure projects. And then there's also the opportunities we've seen across counties, the multi-asset and or the multi-county, meaning you could have assets across different sectors, and therefore you pull them together to raise finance, provided they meet the standards, or different counties pull together their resources across similar sectors or different sectors. Maybe you could have a wash bond, a water and sanitation bond covering more than one county, and therefore you're able to pull your strengths together to actually raise capital. And finally, one of the huge opportunities we've seen is aggregation. The Kenyan National Sovereign Green Bond, we could actually aggregate projects at the county level under the Kenyan National Sovereign, or we could actually begin to look at subnational regional blocks. Can we raise financing as a block? If on the strength of our own, we can't go to the market, and these are the blocks here, can we begin to look at those blocks as opportunities to actually do what? Raise financing. So I just wanted to put a stop here to say green bonds are possible. It's possible. It has been done before in Kenya. Though private sector, the opportunities for the counties to actually access finance on the back of green finance. The skill sets are improving. The regulatory framework is also improving. The personnel, the support, the partners are available. So the big question is, counties, where are you? And some of those questions around how the counties can facilitate will be what the panelists will be discussing, how to actually attract this capital. What are those regulatory impediments? How can we overcome the regulatory impediments? How can we use what we have to actually advance the cause of green finance in Kenya? So I would like to take a stop here and then perhaps invite my other panelists to join me on the stage. So I invite Anzetse Were. I'd also invite Hillary and Wendy Boyd. So Anzetse is from FSD Kenya. Hillary is from the National Treasury, while Wendy sits at the Nairobi Securities Exchange. We thought it was important to just, aside just sharing our opinions and findings, we thought it was important to get these guys in the room and ask them questions on how we can accelerate the growth in the market, how we can actually get to where we want to be. So perhaps I'll start with you, Hillary, and I guess I'll have to use this and hand over. Okay, you have your mic. Okay, good, fantastic. So Hillary, I'd like to start with you. I mean, let's start from the big boss, National Treasury. You guys are the ones who are at the top there. So I'd like to understand what exactly is the Treasury doing in terms of activities and plans for green finance, green bonds, and where does the counties fit into all of these conversations at the National Treasury, given all of the commitments the president has made, and the desire to actually go green across the counties? I'd like to get your thoughts on what activities National Treasury is doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ike, for that presentation, and actually highlighting what a green bond is and the opportunities around that. I mentioned when we started that green bond is a very important instrument in terms of mobilizing resources to advance the green growth agenda in this country. It's been identified, as I mentioned, since we started the journey of climate change and green economy. So our green economy strategy and implementation plan of 2016-2030, and even our first action plan of 2013-2017 identified green bonds as an innovative instrument to be able to mobilize resources for implementation of those strategic documents. And that's why we started the journey as a country around 2016 in terms of working and also creating that awareness around green bonds, because that is something that was lacking, and creating the enabling environment around green bonds. So in 2017, there was a program called Green Bond Program in Kenya with all the partners that you've seen here and also others. And the aim of that program was to build that market awareness and also to build us as a country to be ready. And some of the achievements as a result of that program was us at the National Treasury developing a green bond framework, a sovereign green bond framework, because you can either issue a green bond as government or as a private sector. A private sector will be now a corporate green bond. The government will be a sovereign green bond. So we developed the sovereign green bond framework for us as a country at the national level to be able to guide the processes of issuances of green bond. Where will the proceeds of the green bond go? Which are the different sectors? What is the institutional structure of us? As Ike has mentioned, green bonds you need to report. You need more work to be done for you to be able to capture the market. Secondly is that there's some work in terms of the enabling policy and guidelines, and I believe my colleague will mention, at the NSC and also at the Capital Markets Authority that were done to be able to changing even the rules of listing a green bond were done at the NSC, and a policy guidance not issued by the Capital Markets Authority. Those were some of the initial steps to be able to enable us to do that. And that one opened the way and opened the market and opened the space. And that's why we had the first issuance in Kenya by Econ Holdings, which was the first green bond issued in Kenya, actually the first green bond in East and the Central African region. Thirdly is that we were able to get verification, second-party opinion for the projects that we had listed, and also develop the green bond asset register that was done. So those were some of the enabling mechanisms that we had put in place. And in terms of the moving forward, what is our plan? Our plan now is to review the framework, because a lot has happened since then. There are changes in the global, there are changes at the national level, there are changes in our strategic documents. Yesterday, or the day before that, there were the president was launching some very important documents here. So those ones we'll have to revise our strategy to align, or to revise our framework to align with those new developments. Secondly is that within the next 5 years, we have what we call the Green Finance Program that we've integrated in our medium-term plan. And one of the items that has been put forth is green financing, and specifically on green bond, for us to be able to build that space, to see more issuances like other countries. South Africa has been issuing green bond at the corporate level more. Other countries in the EU have been issuing green bonds more. So, and that is the space that we want to go. As you've highlighted, that there is a lot of potential. We also, at the GCF level, we have a readiness program that we at the National Treasury issued a no objection letter for, and the project was approved. It's also supposed to build that readiness actions. And this feeds into what the counties can do. You've highlighted the challenges and the limitations. And we hope that moving forward, one thing that we need to do is capacity building, awareness, and working on the assets at the subnational level. Thank you, Ike.
Thank you so much, Hilary. I mean, you've given us so much to chew already. And I mean, I can hear optimism in your voice in terms of the fact that the reviews are being done to ensure that we have a robust framework that enables national and also at subnational level to raise finance. But I mean, that's quite laudable to hear. And I want to take next to Wendy, who is the ESG lead at the Nairobi Securities Exchange. I mean, Wendy, you were part of the team that witnessed the inaugural bond in 2019, which was listed in Kenya and also dual listed in London. I mean, so the question here will be, what were some of those factors that informed the success? But again, why haven't we seen any issuances since 2019 to date? What's happening in the markets? Shed some more light on that for us. Thank you, Wendy.
Okay, thank you, Ike, for that question. Indeed, we did a successful listing of the first green bond in East and Central Africa, which was ACON. Some of the factors that led to the success of this green bond was the fact that ACON had a guarantor. They were able to guarantee 50% repayment on the principal amount and on the interest. Another factor was they had an anchor investor. Another factor that also contributed to the success of this green bond was they received excellent rating from Moody's. And finally, they had a proactive approach towards local roadshows, and not to mention they had done a thorough verification of their green projects. So, Ike, to your second question, I think our biggest challenge is the pricing, which is very much controlled by the operating environment. Case in point, right now for a bond that is for a tenor period of 2 years, the current rate is at about 17%, which is quite high and is not sustainable, but we remain optimistic because the government is rolling out various initiatives that will cool off this interest rate, and therefore we do remain optimistic. And another major challenge is capacity awareness, and the NSC has been doing a lot of workshops, working with private sector, working with government, working with market participants to build capacity around green finance. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Wendy. I mean, I hear the high interest rate, but I see optimism in you in terms of the fact that counties can still go to the market to raise finance. And I mean, which is where the blended financial architecture we were speaking about earlier comes to play. How can we get more partners, more stakeholders to join in this same conversation to ensure that counties get to the market? So I'll be moving over to you, Anzetse. I mean, you're an economist, a senior economist at the financial sector deepening, and I'm sure you are aware of the fiscal constraints currently existing in the market, faced by both national and county. So the big question will be, how can green bond opportunities be used to address this while meeting the objectives of green and climate finance, of reducing greenhouse gas emissions? I mean, we want to hear your views passionately on how you think counties can actually raise finance in all of these whole tensions we've highlighted. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for that, TK. And I think that's the elephant in the room. Everyone is asking, aren't you already over leveraged? Don't you already have a lot of debt? Why are we now talking about county governments going to the market? And I think when we look at the work we've been doing and the use cases that have been arising on how to use green bonds to address a lot of the fiscal challenges, a key opportunity we're seeing is actually in debt and climate swaps. The way we've been seeing an aggregation of the assets as we've been going across counties, it would not be difficult for us to work with the county governments in partnership with the National Treasury to see, are there ways we can aggregate these assets and make them a material contributor to a debt climate swap that then has a material effect on reducing or alleviating some of the fiscal pressure being faced at national government. I think the other thing that we're seeing in terms of the fiscal constraints is actually creating an opportunity around getting partners that would be willing to play that guarantor role without placing the burden on the national government for now. So I think as the national government continues to move forward progressively in addressing the fiscal challenges that they frankly inherited, what the opportunity that's come out of that, the silver lining that's come out of that, is we're seeing a lot of particularly development partners, development banks, MDBs, expressing an interest in seeing how can we use the financing that we have to play a role in bringing down the interest rates that the NSC talked about, so that not only the national government is in a stronger position, but also the county governments. And I think the final thing that we're seeing is, as you know, and sitting beside me, you may not know, is the top gentleman in the National Treasury for Green and Climate Finance and the Green Economy. Him and Hillary and the National Treasury negotiated a facility with the IMF called the Resilience Sustainability Fund. And I think that, again, because it is focused on green and climate funds, what we're finding is, again, an opportunity to use these sorts of new creative financial structures to address the fiscal problems and challenges that we're getting through, but allowing ourselves to center that the priorities that the national government has, but in this case, centering the priorities that the county governments have articulated really quite clearly to us, and not letting that being an impediment, but rather looking at the silver lining. So we don't necessarily see this as an incongruence that can't be overcome. We see this as an opportunity that we can flip around to get other people on board to create the vehicles that we need.
Well, thank you so much, Anzesa. I mean, you've spoken about the debt climate swap. I'm sure you'll be getting more calls around how can we swap our debt for climate. I mean, that's the big elephant in the room. And I mean, I want to say Karibu Sana to Peter and Denge. I mean, the president is quite here, and he heads the Climate Finance Unit and Green Economy at the National Treasury. So you've heard about Anzesa's speech. But I mean, I want to flip it back a little. Fiscal challenges exist, I mean, which we're quite aware of. So the big question is, do you think this is the right time for counties to actually be sourcing for green bonds? Or what advice would you give to them regarding and looking at the current fiscal environment? And Peter, I'd like to hear your thoughts. I mean, that's where you sit. You see all of these requests. You speak to these counties. So do you think this is the right time for counties to access green finance?
Great. It is always difficult to predict or to see what is exactly the right time for the issuance of green or blue bond. As Hantasa says, bonds depends on the market. And the markets depends on the risks. And the difference, the premium, if you look at the premium and the amount you want to raise, those challenges have to be looked in a broader perspective, which is linked to what is going on globally and also what is happening here in the county at the moment. Fiscal risks are aligned with political risks. But today is a good day because in the morning we had a very good meeting, and it seems that we are ready now. We had a good meeting with the IMF, and there is now a very strong feeling after the release of the yesterday's financing locally led check. So it means that the counties have already put in place legal and regulatory framework, the necessary capacity to identify what Hillary called the green bond or blue bond assets. What is important and what brings in the important thing is how a county or a subnational or a national can come up with genuinely verifiable green assets, those projects. But luckily, because we had already done that, it is only that we could not issue because the market rating at that time in 2021 was not conducive. After issuance of the first corporate bond, all the systems, the green bond framework, which Hillary has talked about, the reporting mechanisms, the identification, we saw that it was not good at that point. But now, with all what is prevailing, including the 17% rate, there are now a new mechanism where we will definitely have a de-risking facility. We are putting up a de-risking facility for the counties because the counties have saved some significant resources based on what they would have got from the PLOCA program. And those significance are now going to be put in a local de-risking facility. And that facility now will be part and parcel of the equity which the government or the 44 government will put in. And with the RSF now, we're already in the second phase of the RSF, which is now being to be used to mobilize crowd-in climate finance over and above the RSF, which is meant for the reform. So now we have already started the second phase, and one of the key pillar of that second phase is the issuance of green-blue bond. Now that green-blue bond, you are also aware that we have a green fiscal incentive policy, which now proposes the establishment of Kenya Green Investment Bank, which is based on the Global Green Investment Bank. Now that bank is now going to be capitalized with the resources that we already saved now, very significant, I will not say the figure, then that one now will be used as a collateral, and then we are now in discussion with insurance companies with the AAA rating, which now when we unveil it, our bond is going to be very significant and very good. But we are there now.
Wow. Thank you so much, Peter. I mean, your optimism is, but the facts are clear. De-risking has come to stay, which means counties can begin to leverage the support of the national government to go issue green bonds. I mean, the Kenya Green Investment Bank is also another game changer. I mean, I'm being signaled that we need to begin to round off this particular session. So what I would like to do with the panelists is to, give you one final shot, but to take a final remark, but I'll ask you a question to join your remarks. So please permit me to ask you one final question, but use that in making your concluding remarks, my panelists. So, let me start with you, and since you're with the microphone there. From all you've heard, given your background in finance also, what role do you really see subnational bonds playing in scaling green bonds across the county, across the country, and also across the continent? Is this possible? What's your take on that, and also your final remarks? Thank you.
Yes, that's a really important question, because one of the things we're seeing in the conversations that we're having is a desire to see what we do with the subnational governments in Kenya being replicated by partners in the other countries in which they're operating. So when we were working with you and others, and Peter and Hillary, we were quite deliberate in creating an approach to this that would work in Kenya, but we could easily then go to Nigeria, and which is actually one of the reasons we chose and are working with you. People have a presence in other countries. We chose an approach that you can easily scale in other countries. Because one of the things we're finding is that in addition to all the technical problems around green bonds, what we see is that a lot of partners don't take the time, first of all, to approach the county governments with humility and respect, to approach the county governments or subnational governments with an understanding that they're the ones that are in charge of the spaces that they're in. And the other thing we've seen actually is that often there tends to be a bit of an extractive relationship with the county governments. And I think one of the things that we are quite deliberate is we just don't go to the counties, get the information and leave. We decided to take time to work with the governors, the deputy governors, the CECs, build their capacity, help them understand green bonds, try and understand where they are. This is really important in creating a pipeline. I can't explain to you how important it is in African markets to develop the relationships that will allow you to have a continued understanding of the issues you need to bear in mind that then allow you to develop a pipeline of projects that support the communities and the governments that you're working with, but that the market also makes sense. So I think that's a big thing that I think I've learned is the importance of relationships, maintaining them, and that's why for us with the county government, sadly, they're not here with us today, but we will have a full launch where they're centered, their voices are centered, their projects are centered, and there's a big understanding that this is the way business is going to be done. You can't do projects at national, subnational governments without centering the agents there. So I can't emphasize enough how important that is. I think the other thing that we're learning that can be applied across African markets is things can look the same, but they're actually quite different. So when you go to a county government and you're looking at the green assets, or you're working with them saying, okay, we've got this wash project, we've got this sanitation project, the details of the capabilities of the county, the assets, the community dynamics, the markets that they're dealing with, the economic context is really important, because when you understand that, you'll then be able to say, well, for this specific area, the pipeline, this is what the pipeline is going to look at. So if we're going to create a pipeline of green bond projects, for example, in Vihiga or in Nandi or Laikipia, let's look at these, but these will be completely different, perhaps from the pipeline that we see in Nairobi or in Kisumu. So I think it's really important to understand that, yes, there may be common assets and common sectors, but that the details matter, and this is something across Africa because of how diverse our geography and our topography is. It's a real direct link to then the green bonds that we then list. So I think those are the things that immediately I can say we've seen the appetite in other countries and in some of our partners in sharing our learnings with other countries. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Anzete. I mean, ambition and viability, that's what you've spoken to. I mean, great ambition, and I mean, also the projects, how viable are those projects across counties? And maybe to you, Wendy, I mean, you've been an active partner in this particular exercise through the counties. I mean, hearing Anzete speak about the opportunities, well, I mean, from your perspective, what excites the NSC? What excites you from all of this whole conversation that you think will be ready for the market for us to get one of these counties listed in a very short time? Thank you.
Okay. As the NSC, we're very excited to play a part in the transition from the brown economy to the green economy. We're happy to support the county government. We're happy to support national government through the workshops and the assessments that we've been carrying out in collaboration with FSD, with Augusto. We have identified water and sanitation to be a very prime area that is ready to issue a green bond, and our proposal to National Treasury has been to introduce a green bond surcharge to the pricing of water so that it can be channeled to the infrastructure and provide water to the wider population. So I think that is what is very exciting for us, because it is one of our strategic priorities to be able to support the transition to the green economy, to have products that can consider E, S, and G factors when it comes to green finance. So I'd also like to say that the green bond market has been performing very well. You've had the inaugural green bond, the Econ green bond that was issued. The performance is really outstanding. They're actually considering an early redemption. They don't need to wait for the entire period. They're actually, they have exhibited good performance. So there is opportunity in green bonds, and as the exchange, we're happy to support. We're happy to build capacity. You may know that the NSC launched a guideline manual on ESG reporting, and we've seen that some of the challenges in the county level has been around financial reporting. So we are happy to collaborate with the counties and offer trainings around ESG reporting so that you can adopt the guidelines that are applicable and start having good reports around the green projects. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Wendy, for that high-level insights. And Hillary, back to the National Treasury. I mean, you've heard it all. There's appetite, there's optimism. I mean, Wendy had even mentioned one of those projects, sector areas that there's a lot of interest, water and sanitation. And I'm just curious, National Treasury, the counties come on your door knocking tomorrow. What support are you providing to these counties to scale them to the market? We want to begin to move from talking into action. So Hillary, I'll use that to conclude in terms of what the National Treasury is doing to support this growth across the counties. Thank you.
Thank you, Ike, for that question. You've highlighted a number of issues, and the panel has also highlighted the potential of green bonds and the readiness actions that are needed. I've highlighted that we've continued at the National Treasury to build the capacity of the counties, and Mr. Odengo, my boss, mentioned that we were releasing funds recently to the counties to support the work that they are doing in terms of their readiness actions, policy-wise and institutional-wise. Counties now have units that are dedicated to climate change or green economy related actions. They have developed enabling policy and regulatory frameworks to enable them to move in that space. And I think that is the first step that the National Treasury is doing in terms of supporting the counties on that space. Secondly, as I mentioned, is capacity building. And I'll talk of capacity building not only at the sub-national level, but also at the national level. Capacity in terms of the ability for us to be able to map out the market, the capacity to understand the market well, capacity to originate projects, capacity to be able to do the disclosures, the reporting, and so on. You've heard that Augusto is the only entity, a professional entity that can verify a bond. Before Augusto was there, we didn't have any other entity in the continent. So I believe that's also some other steps that we need to take as a country in terms of building the capacity of professionals in this space of green finance, including green bonds. And finally is to mention that I think we need to build our creditworthiness so that we restructure our financing. You've mentioned the key challenges, financial statements, and so on. What Johannesburg did, what Cape Town did as cities, was to be able to restructure their financing. After that, they were able to issue green bonds. They can now be able to issue because they are now having a AA rating and so on. So I think that is one of the most significant steps that we can do as a country and as counties. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Hillary. And I mean, Peter, it's just for you to round up all of these whole conversations and you just point us in the direction to go so that we can also give some time for the audience for a few questions. And Peter, it's just to, from where you sit, I mean, you are the one in charge of this. I mean, is it this year? Next year? When, Peter? Thank you.
Great. For us, we were ready before you, Augusto. Yes, if you look at the journey we started in creating an enabling environment for issuance of green bond, we were ahead of Nigeria. Nigeria did it, but a small one of 30 million. We said, no, Kenya is a big country, we don't deal with small things. At the time, we had made everything. And by the way, when we were reviewed by the third-party opinion, Cicero from Oslo, Norway, the best rating agency, we were rated, was it excellent? Very good. That very good alone from that second-party opinion means that even if we had to issue it, our rating or the coupon price would be better. But today, we are far better, particularly for the counties. All the counties, 47 counties from this year have got about 33 million Kenya shillings for only capacity building for them to build, strengthen those institutions that we have done. That is money already there, allocated, and they will get it per year up to 2027. The thing that you people call TA. In Treasury, we do not cherish TA. We cherish institutional capacity building support by giving their own resources. We have given them, and they have done well. With that money now, the counties have done their PCRA, Participatory Climate Risk Assessment. That Participatory Climate Risk Assessment is one of the tools that the bond issuance should be looking whether there is no what we call greenwashing, where you have a pipeline of projects which have got no value either in adaptation. Thirdly, starting next month, there will be now this bigger CCR grant, County Climate Risk Resilient Investment Grant, of which an average of 1.5 million per county per year for the next 3 years. See, that is already in terms of the baseline which they are starting. Then beyond that, they all have the legislations which is required. Beyond that, we have already established coding, tracking, reporting, and verification of climate finance. We track climate finance, and you bear as a witness, we are the first country with our climate finance landscape reporting, 2022, and now we are doing another one. All those combined together means we are more ready today than even Cape Town, because their water, it was as a result of the problem. But now look, it's not only that. You talked about debt swap. We are now at another level where now we are swapping our debt for climate action. And we are already at a position where we have already started negotiating bilaterally with our donors. And we have already secured about 60 million euros for the next 5 years. All these are going to the counties. The final thing here is that the counties themselves have now to take the responsibility. The national government has done, we have done our part. The county governments must now wake up and do their part. No time for holy polloi employment. This is technical. This requires high-level understanding of the science of the green bond. It is not just a vanilla bond. It is different. It's not just money. You get it, it has to be paid for. So if you misuse it, maneno ningapi? Maneno ningapi? Na yaene, you just commit suicide. We will not wait to take you anywhere, because there is no reason to do wrong in this thing. And the money must reach. So we are ready, but I'm happy that with the IMF and the development, FSD, the back is on your own. Use it well, strengthen those capacity. But the good thing also, under the FLOCA program, counties have also contributed 3 billion equivalent Kenya shillings from their development fund, and that is from the National Treasury, equivalent to $75 million over the same period. It means they are committed also to contribute, and that is also the areas that were. For the markets, Capital Markets Authority, Nairobi Securities, those are our National Treasury institutions. We are working together, and today we were with the central bank. The green bond taxonomy is almost done. What do we need else? We issue it, and it is quickly. You need to move with speed. Citibank, which we have been working with, and I can see this gentleman here. Yes, there is a very good bond which we are issuing for something nice. I will not say it because people can copy. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are at a better stage, and I was just reading what is going on in Sierra Leone. Tanzanians are here. We are going to Africa. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Peter. I mean, you heard from the horse's mouth. I dare not add anything to what he said already. So at this stage, what we would like to do is take a few questions. I know they're already signaling to us that we need to round up. So we just want to take 2-3 questions and we'll be done for today. If you have questions, please, maybe you could just raise your hand and we'll just pick 2-3 questions for the panelists. And we'll also be happy if you don't have questions, because they're already, I mean, eager to get us out of this stage here. So,
thank you. I'm Brenda Akinyi. I work with Anglican Development Services Western. So what I would want to understand is this issue of green bond. I know those are projects that are existing. You've just assessed them. They receive the funds. So how are we going to integrate the issues of locally led, whereby the programs are supposed to be identified by the communities? So these are some of the projects who are not identified by the communities. How are we going to work in a way that those programs, there's that improved ownership of the community with that programs, because we are just leveraging on what is existing. And then the second one, what's the role of the CSOs in this whole thing? Thank you.
We'll wait for another question and I'll take that.
Thank you. My name is Francis Makabwa. I'm from Kenyan. I just wanted you to clarify, you say the environment, or rather Kenyan rating in 2021 was not right. It's all right now, because you say 2023 today, we are so prime and ready to go green. So I just wanted you to clarify. And then you talked of de-risking county governments. How are you de-risking it? Because I know de-risking is one of the key areas for you to get this money. So maybe just shed some clarity on that for my own understanding.
Thank you. And that question on CSOs is right. And in fact, if you look at the methodology that we used, the first day that we went to the counties, we were working mainly with the CCs, the governors, the deputy governors. The entire second day was with civil society and private sector. So we were quite deliberate. And to be honest, there's no contention that we saw in terms of a conflict in the articulations that we were seeing from civil society and the articulations we're seeing from the county governments on these are the priorities we want to see at the table. So what we have right now is, for each county, is a laundry list or several projects that are both the view of the county governments and the view of the civil society and the private sector. And the real trick, and I think the real work that we're going to have to do, is find within those projects that have been combinedly identified, which ones make the most sense to go to market in a way that can be done within the life of this administration. So now we're dealing with a political economy question, because there are those projects that we can do, but it won't be until the next administrations that we get those to market. So the work that we're doing now, and in fact we're doing validation workshops between this week and next week, and in some cases we'll be going back to counties. Now our job is, of all these projects, you say you want water projects to reach particularly, these communities that aren't being served, or let's look at this waste management projects, let's look at this ecotourism projects. Now the work is, let's find the ones that can actually go to market, that these governments that has done all this work, the administrations that are in office, can actually see the fruits of their labor. So that is the work we're doing, balancing the green bond opportunity with the reality of the political economy in which we all live in this country. But don't worry, that is something that we are very alive to, and I'm glad that you asked that.
Maybe I can clarify what we meant. The bond which we were supposed to issue in 2021 was not collateralized. So it was not guaranteed. The bond, she says, was co-guaranteed by guarantor. When you have a guarantee, the third-party guarantee your bond, now it builds in confidence to the bond buyers, coupon buyers. Therefore, the rating or the interest rates becomes low. What we are saying now is exactly the same. That is why now I said the talks are to collateralize the bond, the green bond we are going to issue. And in that case, that is where I meant that there is, we are talking with a high level, very good insurance firm, which has already been rated AAA to guarantee this, and IMF is looking for other guarantors. When they get that, then it means that that bond is now guaranteed. The investors are confident, should there be anything, their investment and money will be paid. That is what I mean with now collateralizing a bond. A bond. Just like the bonds that has got that, if you get even two guarantors, perfect. The lower, the premium, the difference between the market, traditional market, and that was low. That is where we are going, and that is where we also said the new green investment facility, of which significant resources will be also part of the institution without what we call the legacy of misuse. If for example, a bank, a financial institution that is existing now want to issue a bond, but it has got some legacy problems, then that again affects the rating of that bond. And then the third-party opinion also now comes in to give the confidence. And of course, there is now a very good political landscape which was not there, because investors don't want to invest because they don't know how the political situation in the next regime will look like. So they hold on to clear. Now we know for 4 years it will be good. We know where we are, we know where we are going. All these put together means that now it is clear and good, and you can get a better rate. There was a question, how is the local community involved in selecting the project? That has already been answered by what we said, that under the locally led financing, locally led climate action, within that support, all the institutions, there is county climate committees, county ward climate committees. Those are the people who are responsible for proposing viable potential projects, which will now be taken through the county subnationals, which will be reviewed and purified to be brought to the national. So locally led principles is already embedded at the ward level. Ward level is the lowest. And then the people, the members of those committees are from the villages. It is in the village where action takes place. Water is in the village. Women, youth, people with disability, gentlemen of the indigenous people, for example, me, the fishermen, we are there and they all contribute and it comes up to here. So locally led principle, 100%. I coordinate the program, but I have no power to change so long as it is viable, so long as it is bankable.
Thank you.
And if it is not bankable, we will make it bankable, because we know at the local level, you do not have capacity to make it bankable. That is why I have Hillary. That is why we work with Antesa. That is why I work with the SORE. And they are all here. So that's not a big deal. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Peter. I mean, from all of us here, we'd just like to say thank you to the panelists. Thank you to Hillary, to Wendy, to Anzese, and to Peter for sharing your insights. I mean, from my end, it's just to push and see how we get over the line with the counties. And the idea is to scale this across the 47 counties in Kenya. So, I mean, next we'll be knocking on your counties if we're not part of the 10 originally. But thank you so much. And I'll hand over to Collins for final remarks. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I am not going to make any remarks. I am here to do one thing, and that is to appreciate the people who've made this happen. So in true Kenyan fashion, I'd like us to put our hands together like this for the people. So I will say the panelists and Ike, let us give them one thunderous clap. And this work has been made possible by the leadership and the work that people in various organizations are doing. So Augusto and Co, ADA Consortium, FSD Kenya, the Nairobi Securities Exchange, the Capital Markets Authority, and the National Treasury. We really do appreciate the work that is going on. And as Anzese and the rest of the team have mentioned, in the near future, the full work will be done. There will be a launch. Please keep tabs on that. I am responsible for fsdkenya.org. Please visit that website and follow us on our social channels. So thank you and have a lovely evening.